My name is Crix Tal of the Velthani Empire, and I have dedicated my entire academic career to studying combat methodologies across 17 different species, which, let me tell you, is about as thrilling as it sounds. Today, however, I witnessed something that will require me to rewrite half my dissertations and probably seek therapy. The Galactic Combat Academy on Station Omega-7 is supposed to be the pinnacle of interspecies martial education. Here, the galaxy's finest warriors come to test their mettle against creatures that could tear apart starships with their bare appendages. The facility boasts gravity chambers that can simulate everything from gas giant compression to asteroid field 0G. It's quite impressive, really. On any given day, you might see a Thrakari berserker, 8 feet of pure muscle and rage, sparring with a crystalline zephyrite whose body can literally conduct electricity. The Moltok delegation practices their infamous acid spit techniques, while the Hegemony's cyber-enhanced soldiers calibrate their targeting systems. It's like a menagerie of death, but with better lighting and complementary protein supplements. Then there's Maya Knox. The human exchange student arrived 3 cycles ago as part of some diplomatic goodwill program. Apparently, her species recently achieved faster-than-light travel, and the Galactic Council decided to, how do they put it, extend the olive branch. Whatever an olive branch is. Probably another one of their primitive weapons. Maya stands roughly 5.5 feet tall, which is adorable when you consider that most species here tower over 7 feet minimum. Her skin lacks any natural armor plating, her teeth couldn't pierce synthetic leather, and she possesses exactly 0 natural weapons. No claws, no venomous glands, no electromagnetic pulse generation. Nothing. She's basically a walking contradiction to everything we know about apex predators. The other students find her presence amusing. Look at the little pink thing. Gormath the Bone Crusher wheezed yesterday, his respiratory slits fluttering with what I assume was laughter. Does it even have proper calcium deposits in its skeleton? The Kelvaxian twins, each possessing enough bioelectric output to power a small moon, regularly joke about whether humans can even see properly with those tiny, forward-facing eyes. Prey species vision, they call it, which sends the entire cohort into fits of what their species considers humor. Even the instructors seem baffled by her inclusion. Commander Threxpol, a decorated veteran of the Sigma Wars, once spent an entire lesson explaining why soft-tissue species historically make poor combat candidates. Maya sat in the back row that day, quietly taking notes and occasionally munching on some brown, jerky-like substance she keeps in her pockets. The girl never participates in pre-combat rituals, never joins the intimidation displays, and has yet to demonstrate a single augmented ability. She just exists, quietly. Politely. Like the galaxy's most underwhelming houseplant. Which is why what happened today has left me questioning everything I thought I knew about evolutionary biology, combat effectiveness, and the fundamental nature of predator-prey relationships. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the challenge that changed everything. Every month, the Academy hosts what they call the Apex Trial. It's essentially a gladiatorial showcase where one student volunteers to face off against the station's resident nightmare fuel. Think of it as educational entertainment, except the education involves learning how many ways your species can be dismembered. This month's announcement came during our standard morning assembly. Commander Threxpol stood at the podium, his forearms gesticulating dramatically as he spoke. Students of the Academy. He began, his voice carrying that distinctive military boom that makes your internal organs vibrate. It is time once again to witness true predatory excellence in action. The assembled crowd of 200 aliens rustled with anticipation. Scales scraped against exoskeletons, cybernetic implants hummed to life, and somewhere in the back, a Methonian started that weird clicking sound they make when excited. This cycle, Threxpol continued, our challenger will face Gorvak the Destroyer. The reaction was immediate. Half the Academy went dead silent, while the other half began what I can only describe as nervous chittering. Even the Thrakari berserkers, beings literally bred for combat, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Gorvak the Destroyer stands 8 feet tall and weighs approximately 600 pounds of pure, concentrated violence. His species, The Krillian apex hunters, evolved on a planet where everything, including the vegetation, actively tries to kill you. Their natural armor plating can deflect plasma bolts, their claws can slice through reinforced titanium, and their jaw strength registers at roughly 4,000 pounds per square inch. Oh, and did I mention he's completely undefeated? 73 consecutive victories across 12 different combat academies. His last opponent, a cybernetically enhanced hegemony warrior, lasted exactly 47 seconds before requiring emergency medical reconstruction. The statistical breakdown of Gorvak's combat effectiveness reads like a horror novel. Average fight duration, 2 minutes, 14 seconds. Opponents requiring medical intervention, 100%. Opponents requesting immediate transfer to different academies, also 100%. So, Commander Threxpol announced, scanning the suddenly very quiet assembly hall, who among you believes they possess the skills necessary to challenge such a formidable opponent? The silence stretched on for what felt like several geological epochs. You could practically hear everyone's survival instincts screaming in unison. Then, from the back of the hall, a small hand raised. Maya Knox stood up, still chewing on that mysterious brown substance, and said in the most casual tone imaginable, "I give it a shot." The reaction was, well, calling it laughter would be generous. It was more like the sound you'd expect if someone told a joke at a funeral, uncomfortable, inappropriate, and slightly hysterical. The Kelvaxian twins literally short-circuited from amusement overload, their bioelectric fields sparking wildly. Gormeth the Bone Crusher was laughing so hard his respiratory slits were making sounds like a malfunctioning air recycler. "The little pink thing wants to fight Gorvak," he wheezed between gasps. "Should we prepare a memorial service now or wait until after they scrape her off the arena floor?" Commander Threxpol looked genuinely confused. His species doesn't really do facial expressions, but his head tilted in that universal gesture of "did I hear that correctly?" "Miss Knox," he said slowly, are you certain you understand what you're volunteering for?" Maya shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both confidence and complete indifference to the laws of physics. "Big, scary guy, right? How hard can it be?" So the betting pools opened immediately. Within minutes, the odds were running at roughly 47,000 to 1 against the human. The Methonian bookmakers were practically vibrating with excitement. This was going to be the most profitable massacre in Academy history. Academy officials huddled together for an emergency consultation. There were heated discussions about liability waivers, insurance policies, and whether they had enough medical nanobots to reassemble whatever remained of Maya after the encounter. Eventually, they reached a decision that I can only attribute to morbid curiosity and a complete failure of their risk assessment protocols. The challenge was officially accepted. The standard pre-combat preparation period at the Academy is a sight to behold. It's a carefully orchestrated ritual that showcases each species' evolutionary advantages while psychologically preparing them for the violence to come. Or, as I like to call it, an hour of watching everyone try to out-intimidate each other. The arena preparation chamber resembles something between a medical facility and a weapons depot. Holographic displays show real-time biometric readings, atmospheric processors adjust environmental conditions, and robotic assistants scurry about making final equipment checks. The air practically hums with tension and the faint ozone smell of charging energy weapons. Most challengers spend this time engaging in elaborate warm-up routines. The Thrakari perform ritual blood-letting ceremonies to activate their berserker rage states. The Zephyrite undergo crystalline resonance calibration, their bodies literally glowing as they channel electromagnetic energy. The cybernetically enhanced species run diagnostic protocols, their mechanical components whirring and clicking in precise synchronization. Gorvak the Destroyer's preparation routine is particularly spectacular. He begins with a series of bone-deep roars that register at approximately 120 decibels, loud enough to shatter glass and make most species' inner ears bleed. Then comes the claw-sharpening ritual, where he systematically reduces a series of titanium alloy practice dummies to metallic confetti. The sound is like listening to industrial machinery having a nervous breakdown. His natural armor plating shifts and adjusts, overlapping segments locking into optimal defensive configurations. Bioluminescent threat displays run along his spinal ridge, pulsing in patterns that roughly translate to "I am going to reduce you to your component molecules." The temperature in his section of the preparation chamber rises by several degrees just from his metabolic heat output. Meanwhile, Maya Knox sits cross-legged on a bench in the corner, quietly working her way through what appears to be some kind of preserved animal protein. The packaging reads Terran beef jerky spicy. She chews thoughtfully while scrolling through something on a primitive handheld device. The contrast is, well, it's absurd. While Gorvak undergoes a transformation that would make ancient war gods weep with envy, and Maya removes her academy-issued footwear and begins what can only be described as gentle stretching. She touches her toes. She rolls her shoulders. She cracks her knuckles with tiny popping sounds that would be completely inaudible if not for the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. Fascinating, Dr. Velk-Nor, the Academy's xenobiologist, murmured as he monitored the proceedings. Her heart rate remains at baseline levels. No adrenaline spike, no combat hormone release, no activation of fight or flight responses. Either her species lacks proper survival instincts, or— He paused, clearly troubled by some alternative explanation he couldn't quite articulate. The other observers were less scientific in their analysis. "Look at it just sitting there," wheezed Instructor Grixtal, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Does it even understand what's about to happen? Should someone explain the concept of mortal danger to the little creature?" The Academy's combat analysts were having a field day with their projections. Their predictive algorithms, normally accurate to within 97%, were running into calculation errors when trying to process Maya's combat potential. And her biological readings simply didn't compute with their understanding of predator-prey dynamics. "Muscle density, insufficient for meaningful force generation," announced the lead analyst. "Reaction time, adequate for prey species, inadequate for combat situations. Natural weapons systems, non-existent. Protective adaptations, absent. Estimated survival time against Gorvak the Destroyer, 12 to 15 seconds, assuming she attempts to flee immediately." Maya finished her stretching routine and stood up, brushing imaginary dust off her standard-issue training uniform. She walked over to the observation window separating the preparation areas and waved at Gorvak with the kind of casual friendliness you might show a neighbor. Gorvak responded with a roar that cracked the reinforced transparent aluminum. Maya nodded approvingly and gave him a thumbs-up gesture that, according to my research into human non-verbal communication, indicates approval or encouragement. Either she completely misunderstood the threatening display, or she was demonstrating the kind of psychological warfare technique that would make professional interrogators jealous. The betting pools had reached astronomical proportions. The Methonian bookmakers were practically glowing with profit projections. Even the Academy's maintenance staff had gotten involved, wagering their weekly ration credits on various aspects of Maya's inevitable defeat. 10 credits says she faints before the fight officially starts, chittered maintenance drone Alpha 7. 20 credits says she tries to surrender in the first 5 seconds, countered Beta 3. Only one entity on the entire station had placed a bet in Maya's favor, the Academy's central AI system. When questioned about this apparent malfunction, it simply responded with insufficient data to calculate human combat variables. Historical precedent suggests unexpected outcomes. The preparation period was nearly over. Gorvak had completed his intimidation displays and was now radiating enough menace to power a small starship. Maya had finished her snack and was now quietly humming what sounded like some kind of primitive musical composition. In exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, they would enter the arena together. This was going to be either the shortest fight in Academy history, or something that would require me to completely reconsider everything I thought I knew about evolutionary biology. The Academy's main combat arena is an engineering marvel that cost approximately 14 billion credits to construct. The central fighting space measures 100 meters in diameter, surrounded by energy barriers capable of containing a nuclear detonation. The floor is composed of adaptive nanomaterials that can simulate any planetary surface condition, from crystalline ice fields to molten volcanic rock. Surrounding the arena, observation decks rise in concentric circles, accommodating nearly 3,000 spectators. Emergency medical stations are positioned every 20 meters, equipped with trauma bays capable of treating everything from simple lacerations to complete molecular displacement injuries. The Academy's insurance premiums alone could fund a small military fleet. Today, every single seat was occupied. Word had spread throughout the station like wildfire. The soft little human was about to face Gorvak the Destroyer. It was being billed as either the galaxy's most educational demonstration of predator superiority or the most expensive suicide attempt in recorded history. The safety protocols for this particular match were extensive. Emergency medical teams stood by with full trauma response kits. The arena's containment systems had been upgraded to maximum settings. 3 separate evacuation plans had been filed with station security. The Academy's legal department had prepared enough liability documentation to stock a small library. Commander Threxpol's voice echoed through the arena's public address system. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate gender classification, welcome to this cycle's apex trial. Today's challenger is Maya Knox of the Human Exchange Program. Her opponent needs no introduction. Gorvak the Destroyer, undefeated champion of 73 consecutive battles. The arena's main entrance iris dilated with a mechanical whir, and Gorvak emerged like something from a warrior's nightmare. His 8-foot frame moved with predatory grace, each step producing a resonant thud that vibrated through the arena floor. His armor plating had shifted into full combat configuration, overlapping segments creating an impenetrable shell of natural protection. The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Even species that considered themselves apex predators instinctively recoiled from Gorvak's presence. His bioluminescent threat displays pulsed in hypnotic patterns while his claws extended to their full 12-inch length. The air around him shimmered with heat distortion from his elevated metabolism. Gorvak reached the center of the arena and released a territorial roar that registered at 135 decibels. The sound was so intense that several spectators' translation devices temporarily malfunctioned. He then proceeded to demonstrate his dominance by casually reducing a practiced dummy to scrap metal with a single swipe of his claws. The crowd erupted in appreciation. This was what they had come to see, pure, undiluted predatory excellence. Then the opposite entrance opened, and Maya Knox walked out. She was still chewing. The contrast was so stark it bordered on surreal. While Gorvak radiated menace like a living weapon, Maya strolled toward the arena center with the casual confidence of someone heading to a routine appointment. She had removed her academy jacket, revealing arms that, while certainly fit by human standards, looked like twigs compared to Gorvak's massive limbs. Is she actually going to go through with this?" whispered Dr. Velknor, his voice barely audible over the crowd's murmur. Maya reached the center of the arena and looked up at Gorvak, way up, given their significant height difference. She swallowed her mouthful of jerky, wiped her hands on her pants, and extended one small hand toward her opponent. "Good luck," she said, apparently attempting some kind of pre-combat ritual from her species. Gorvak stared down at the offered appendage with what I can only describe as professional confusion. His species didn't really have concepts like good sportsmanship or fair play. They had concepts like total destruction and molecular disintegration. After a moment of awkward silence, he swatted Maya's hand away with enough force to break most beings' arms. Maya's hand moved with the impact, but she simply nodded, as if this response was perfectly reasonable. "All right then," she said. "Let's do this." The official combat timer began its countdown. 10 seconds. Gorvak shifted into his attack stance, claws extended, muscles coiled like industrial springs. 9 seconds. Maya bounced lightly on her feet, a gesture that looked more like nervous energy than combat preparation. 8 seconds. The crowd held its collective breath. 7 seconds. 6. 5. Gorvak's overconfidence was obvious and, frankly, completely understandable. His previous opponents had been warriors, soldiers, beings specifically evolved for combat. Maya looked like something you'd find working in a clerical position. 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The combat began. Gorvak launched himself forward with the speed and power of an industrial mining drill. His claws swept in a devastating arc designed to end the fight in a single, merciful strike. It was actually quite considerate of him. A quick death would spare Maya the prolonged suffering of a drawn-out defeat. Maya wasn't there. The human had moved with a speed that the arena's sensors almost failed to track. One moment she was standing directly in Gorvak's path, the next she was 3 meters to his left, still maintaining that casual, almost relaxed posture. Gorvak's claws swept through empty air with enough force to generate a visible shockwave. He stumbled slightly, his momentum carrying him past where Maya had been standing. This was unexpected. His prey species detection systems weren't designed for targets that moved like that. The crowd's cheering faltered into confused murmuring. Even the combat analysts looked puzzled. Did she just dodge? Dr. Velknor asked, his voice carrying a note of scientific bewilderment. Maya had already repositioned herself, moving with fluid grace around Gorvak's massive form. She wasn't running away, a fact that confused everyone present. Prey species were supposed to flee. That was literally their primary survival strategy. Gorvak spun to face her, his bioluminescent displays pulsing with increased intensity. If he was surprised by her speed, he didn't show it. After all, he was a professional. 73 victories spoke for themselves. He attacked again, this time with a calculated combination strike, claws sweeping low to cut off escape routes while his other arm moved to grapple and pin his opponent. It was a technique that had worked against cybernetically enhanced warriors. Against one small human, it should have been absolute overkill. Maya flowed around the attack like water around stone. Her movements defied the combat analyst predictions and the crowd's understanding of physics. She was fast, impossibly fast for a species with such basic musculature. More than that, she seemed to anticipate Gorvak's attacks before he fully committed to them, her body already moving to avoid strikes that hadn't yet been thrown. "This is impossible," muttered the lead combat analyst, his instruments registering readings that contradicted everything he knew about human physiology. Her muscle density readings indicate she shouldn't be capable of those acceleration rates. Her reaction times are off the charts. Nothing in her biological profile suggests this level of combat capability. Gorvak was beginning to show signs of frustration. His attacks were becoming more aggressive, less calculated. The crowd was growing restless, their expectations of a quick victory fading into something approaching concern. Maya, meanwhile, continued her pattern of evasion with what appeared to be minimal effort. She hadn't even begun to breathe heavily. What happened next will haunt my academic career for the rest of my natural lifespan. Maya Knox stopped running. She didn't retreat to a defensive position. She didn't attempt to create distance for a strategic withdrawal. She simply stopped, right in the center of the arena, well within Gorvak's striking range, and tilted her head to one side with the expression of someone solving a mildly interesting puzzle. "Okay," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustic systems, "I think I've got your pattern figured out." Pattern? What pattern? Gorvak was 8 feet of pure predatory instinct and violence. He didn't have patterns, he had killing techniques that had been refined over 73 consecutive victories. And the very concept that his combat style could be figured out by something that looked like it belonged in a petting zoo was, well, it was scientifically absurd. Gorvak's response was to unleash his most devastating attack combination, a berserker rush that combined his species' natural aggression with techniques that had dismantled armored war machines. His claws swept in complex arcs designed to overwhelm any possible defensive strategy, while his massive bulk created a wall of destruction that should have been completely unavoidable. Maya sidestepped the first strike, ducked under the second, and then did something that made every observer question their understanding of physics, biology, and the fundamental nature of reality itself. She punched Gorvak in the skull with her bare hand. The sound was like a gunshot echoing through the arena. Not the soft thud you'd expect when fragile human bone met reinforced predator armor, but a sharp, decisive crack that registered clearly on the acoustic sensors. Gorvak the Destroyer, undefeated champion of 73 consecutive battles, 8 feet of natural armor and evolutionary perfection, stopped mid-attack. His bioluminescent displays flickered once, then went dark. His massive frame swayed for exactly 2.3 seconds before toppling backward like a felled tree. The impact of his unconscious body hitting the arena floor registered as a minor seismic event on the station's geological sensors. The silence that followed was absolute. 3,000 beings from dozens of different species sat in stunned, uncomprehending quiet. Even the arena's environmental system seemed to pause, as if the entire station needed a moment to process what had just occurred. Maya looked down at Gorvak's motionless form, then up at the observation decks where thousands of aliens stared at her in various states of shock, confusion, and existential crisis. She shrugged, that same casual gesture that somehow conveyed complete indifference to having just violated several laws of physics. "Well," she said, "that was fun." The medical response was immediate and chaotic. Emergency teams swarmed onto the arena floor with equipment designed to handle every conceivable combat injury. Trauma specialists rushed to Gorvak's side, their instruments registering readings that shouldn't have been possible. "Severe cranial trauma," announced the lead medic, his voice tight with professional confusion. "Hairline fractures across the frontal armor plating. Massive concussion." "How is this possible?" His skull structure should be impervious to blunt force trauma from anything short of industrial mining equipment. The crowd's stunned silence gradually gave way to a rising murmur of disbelief. Translation devices struggled to process the variety of expletives, expressions of shock, and theological questions being voiced in dozens of different languages. "That's impossible," Dr. Velknor repeated, over and over like a mantra that might somehow restore order to a universe that had suddenly stopped making sense. Human bone density cannot generate that level of impact force. Human muscle structure cannot produce that kind of kinetic energy. This violates everything we know about Deathworlder physiology. The combat analysts were having what could charitably be called a complete psychological breakdown. Their instruments had recorded the entire sequence, but the data made no sense. According to their calculations, Maya's punch had generated approximately 3,000 pounds of force per square inch, enough to crack reinforced titanium plating. "The readings must be wrong," the lead analyst muttered, running the same calculations over and over. "Equipment malfunction. Has to be equipment malfunction. Humans can't do this. Nothing in their evolutionary profile supports this level of combat effectiveness." Meanwhile, the Methonian bookmakers were experiencing their own crisis. The betting pools had reached astronomical levels, with virtually every credit wagered against the human. The payout calculations were threatening to bankrupt half the station's economy. Maya walked over to where the medical team was working on Gorvak and knelt down beside his unconscious form. For a moment, genuine concern crossed her features, the first truly serious expression anyone had seen from her. "Hey, is he going to be okay?" she asked one of the medics. "I tried to pull that punch, but I'm still getting used to the gravity differential here." Tried to pull the punch. She had been holding back. The medic stared at her with the expression of someone whose fundamental understanding of reality had just been liquefied and poured down a drain. He'll recover," he managed. "Full healing cycle should take about 6 days." "But Miss Knox, how did you?" Maya stood up, brushing imaginary dust off her hands. "Oh, you know, Deathworlder training and all that. We learned to make do with what we've got." The arena remained silent except for the hum of medical equipment and the sound of 3,000 beings collectively reevaluating everything they thought they knew about humans, combat, and the nature of predator-prey relationships in general. 20 minutes later, Maya sat in the Academy's medical bay answering questions while a team of xenobiologists ran every scan known to modern science on her perfectly normal-looking hands. She seemed genuinely puzzled by all the attention. "Look," she said, flexing her fingers while Dr. Veltnor stared at his instruments in bewilderment. "It's really not that complicated. Earth has a gravity well that's about 40% stronger than standard galactic norm. Our atmospheric pressure is higher, our weather patterns are more violent, and pretty much everything on our planet is actively trying to kill us from birth." She paused to unwrap another piece of jerky from her seemingly inexhaustible supply. "So we adapt. Human children learn to dodge, weave, and hit things before they can properly walk. By the time we reach adulthood, our bone density, muscle efficiency, and reflexes are calibrated for survival in conditions that would hospitalize most species. What you call impossible we call Tuesday morning before breakfast." Commander Threxpole, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet during the entire debriefing, finally spoke. "Miss Knox, are you telling us that all humans possess this level of combat capability?" Maya shrugged. "I'm actually considered pretty average back home. My little sister could probably take Gorvak with one hand tied behind her back. She's really into martial arts." The implications of this statement rippled through the room like a psychological shockwave. An entire species of beings who casually possessed the combat capabilities to disable the galaxy's most feared predators. The diplomatic ramifications alone were staggering. Over the following days, Maya's casual victory became the most analyzed combat footage in Academy history. The other students now approached her with a mixture of profound respect and barely concealed terror. Even the Thrakari berserkers started offering her their choicest rations as tribute. As for me, Crixtal of the Velthani Empire, I have spent the past 3 cycles completely rewriting my dissertation on interspecies combat dynamics. My new working title is Why Everything We Thought We Knew About Humans is Catastrophically Wrong. The Academy's betting pools have been permanently restructured. The Methonian bookmakers now refuse to take wagers against any human participant, citing statistical impossibility of profitable returns. And Maya? She continues to attend classes, participate in training exercises, and consume an apparently endless supply of preserved animal proteins. Yesterday I observed her casually bench pressing what appeared to be roughly twice her body weight while reading a technical manual on starship engineering. When asked about her extraordinary abilities, she simply smiled and said, "You should see what we can do when we're actually trying." I have officially requested a transfer to a different research specialty. Theoretical astrophysics seems much safer than studying beings who treat the laws of physics as gentle suggestions. But I'll never forget the sight of Maya Knox finishing her snack, wiping her hands on her pants, and casually redefining everything we thought we knew about the nature of predation in the galaxy.